there's just been a major development with, a small group of people who are trying to do something about what Israel is doing in Gaza, um, trying to stand up to it. People who set sail on a flotilla on a small ship trying to reach Gaza with humanitarian aid. Israel has just kidnapped them off the coast of Gaza. That's so what we're showing on screen there for our audio on it is the last image from the boat
So
before
frightening.
Israeli commandos took it over, and everyone has their hands up, and they were all ordered to throw their phones into the sea, and Israel sprayed some toxic white substance on their boat and then just kidnapped everybody and
Yeah.
is now taking them off to prison for deportation.
And by the way, wait, can we just, oh yeah, this is the person we're about to hear from, and you could see him in the photo, is Tiago Avila, the Brazilian activist, environmental and pro-Palestine activist. We interviewed him with Huwaida Araf, who was one of the organizers. She's an international human rights lawyer of Palestinian descent, and one of the organizers of the Freedom Flotillas. And I really urge people, if they missed that, to watch that. And I just also want to say, to remind people, some people don't know this, that Israel did fatally shoot unarmed activists in 2010, also trying to break the siege. So we need to remember that, because it's awful. That was the Mavi Marmara ship. Again, this is something that I think people need to know. Obviously, this is what Israel is doing, and it's so funny to watch Israel defenders try to claim that this is somehow allowed by international law. First of all, it's not. But second of all, these are people who are defending a government that has touted international law and humanitarian international law at every turn. But it's totally illegal to attack and board that. And imagine if these were like Houthis who boarded a boat with, let's say international activists on it. The world would, no one would tolerate that. They just think it's piracy and kidnapping. But
yeah, again, it's really worth stressing. What are these people trying to do? They're trying to break a blockade of a defenseless death camp where Israel is carrying out mass murder and imposing a starvation siege. And so they're trying to break. And again, nobody recognizes Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip and West Bank. It's not Israeli territory,
right.
No matter what Israel apologists say.
Right.
And so Israel has no right to try to stop people from going there, especially people trying to break a starvation siege that Israel is imposing. And I just want to salute the courage of everybody aboard that ship. That is actual courage right there. That's people, including Greta Thunberg, using the platform she has to shine a light on the moral issue of our time, and not just talk about it rhetorically, actually putting her body on the line. And it's not easy doing what these people did. I was on a flotilla attempt back in 2000, like over a decade ago, the one that left from Greece. And as soon as we left, it was aboard. I was there covering it for Democracy Now, and it was a boat full of U.S. citizens, people like Colonel Ann Wright was there, Medea Benjamin, Alice Walker, the author, Ray McGovern, and
former CIA.
As soon as we left port, basically Greek authorities stopped the ship at gunpoint and forced it back. And so, we were inconvenienced for like half a day. These people have been sailing for many days now, and now they got very close to Gaza, and then they were basically, now they've been abducted. And I'm sure it's not going to be pleasant for them to go through Israeli custody and then deportation, but they did it because they want to do something for the Holocaust of our time. And I just really salute their courage.
Yeah. Total humanity, inspiring, gives hope. Greta Thunberg, as you pointed out, is on that boat, and she released a kind of haunting video, which was basically like, if you see this video, it means we've been boarded and kidnapped. And according to Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, by the way, the activists will be played footage of Hamas's October 7th attacks. That's what they're going to be doing. It's interesting that they're
Yeah. Well, so basically, Israel's going to try to play these people the Israeli produced propaganda video that, as Susan Abdulhawa pointed out, Susan's been a guest on this show. She points out that Israel never releases that video to the public.
I
Like,
wonder why, right?
why is this video only shown behind closed doors to like select people and now to like kidnapped activists? If they really believe in that video and they think it's so damn, why don't they release it to the public so we all can see it? You know,
Exactly.
it's because, you know, the answer is, as Susan points out, it's selectively edited to have a propaganda effect, and it also undercuts all the other propaganda that they put out about October 7th, beheaded babies, mass rape, because there's no evidence of any of that on the video because those were fabrications. So now they think that showing a bunch of righteous people who put their bodies on the line to stop a genocide, a propaganda video that no one else can see, is somehow going to do something. I mean, but this is all Israel can do. And they put out a photograph of themselves offering these kidnapped activists sandwiches and water,
right,
to make themselves look good, when the whole point of this boat is to try to bring food and water to the people of Gaza, because Israel is denying them food and water. As my dad Gabor pointed out in a video that he put out, that, you know, whether the boat reaches Gaza or not, the people on the ship have already won, because they showed to the world, just again, the sadism and cruelty of Israel and the impunity they have to carry out mass murder, but how it will not be tolerated by people of conscience around the planet. And that's who the people on this ship represented.
right. It's also worth reminding people that Senator Lindsey Graham, thought it would be funny to tweet out about Greta. I hope she can swim.
Yeah. That was Lindsey Graham basically calling for a young activist to be killed by his favorite client state.
Right. And given that Israel has literally killed people before on a boat trying to get aid to Gaza, it makes that incredibly all the more horrific and frightening. We are so excited to be joined by two guests. Huwaida Araf is a Palestinian-American human rights attorney and one of the organizers of the Freedom Flotilla. Tiago Avila is a Brazilian environmental and pro-Palestine activist, coordinator of Freedom Flotilla Brazil, and member of the steering committee of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition.
And just a few days ago, one of their ships was attacked by drones off the coast of Malta as it prepared to leave for Gaza, carrying humanitarian aid. This is far from the first time when a Gaza Freedom Flotilla has been attacked. In 2010, Israel infamously killed participants in the Freedom Flotilla aboard a ship called the Mavi Marmara. So there's a long history of this. And one of the international activists who was there to take part in this new flotilla attempted sailing to Gaza was the very famous environmental activist Greta Thunberg.
I was part of a group who was supposed to board that boat today to continue the voyage towards Gaza, which is one of many attempts to open up a humanitarian corridor and to do our part to keep trying to break Israel's illegal siege on Gaza.
So that's Greta Thunberg, and hear for more on the attack on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla and the long history of Israeli efforts to prevent their humanitarian missions. Let's go now to Huwaida Araf and Tiago Avila.
Thank you so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having us.
So, Huwaida, you've been a longtime organizer with the Gaza Freedom Flotilla. And for people who don't know, can you just give us a little bit of the history of the organization? And then, Tiago, I want to ask you about how you got involved in this project.
Yes, sure. Actually, this effort to try to break Israel's illegal siege on Gaza began back in 2008. Before we were a coalition, it started with a small group of people, and we were called the Free Gaza movement back then. And it was born out of frustration of Israel's siege on Gaza that was devastating the economy, killing people who weren't able to get the medical attention that they needed, and also really affecting people's health and nutrition and well-being, with children even being malnutrition back in 2008, and the world not doing anything about it. Nobody forcing Israel to end its unlawful policies and its deadly policies, certainly with vis-a-vis Palestine as a whole, but specifically with this siege on Gaza. And so a few people who had been volunteers with the International Solidarity Movement were discussing what is possible to do when one of them suggested that we try sailing a boat to Gaza. And even if we don't reach Gaza, the point would be to show that Israel's policy, this siege, is not about security, which Israel likes to frame all of its policies as being about security, because we would be international peace activists on a boat wanting to get to the people of Gaza. We constituted no threat. And that is how we set off in the summer of 2008. We had 2 small fishing boats, 44 people from 17 different countries. And honestly, we did not expect to reach Gaza because Israel was threatening us, saying no way they were going to let us in and they were going to intercept our ships by any means. And at the last minute, actually, Israel backed down and we made it to Gaza, becoming the first people to make it to Gaza without Israel's permission in over 40 years. And that was just a phenomenal experience, because here we are reaching the shores of a small area of land where you have 2 million people who are trapped in literally a concentration camp, as Israel is trying to annihilate them and making the world believe these horrible things about how violent Palestinians are, and specifically in Gaza. And yet thousands of people came out to meet us so warmly and so excited that people would take to the sea in this way to stand up for their rights, not carrying aid. We weren't carrying humanitarian aid. Our ships barely carried us, even though it was very much needed. But the people were so happy and excited to receive us because of what we did is actually confront Israel's policy, because Palestinians don't want to live on aid. They want the right to live free and to be able to work and feed their families and live a life of dignity. Right now, we were able to reach Gaza a few times that way. Then Israel started attacking us. After the 5th voyage, Israel started using force against us 3 times, trying to sink our ships, ramming us in international waters. And at one point also commandeering the ship and arresting, taking hostage everyone on board. And that is when we decided that one small boat wasn't going to work anymore. And we had the idea of escalating and building up a flotilla. And that was the flotilla we built in May of 2010 that set sail towards Gaza. We had 7 ships, 3 of them cargo ships. And at that time, we were loaded with 10,000 tons of aid. We had 700 people from 35 countries. And we were carrying a lot of aid at that time because Israel had devastated Gaza with Operation Cast Lead and was not letting in things that people needed to rebuild, just very draconian, punishing policies that had nothing at all to do with security. If I'm just going to give an example of how ridiculous their policies were. They would allow in shampoo, but not conditioner. They would allow in wheelchairs, but not the batteries for the wheelchairs. They would not let in chocolate or kids' toys, or things like that, okay, granted, it wasn't absolutely needed, but it was a policy that designed to make Palestinians, or just to allow them to survive on the bare minimum. And in fact, Israeli leaders back then described it as putting Palestinians on a diet. So just the bare minimum allowing in. And again, the world stood for it. And we were not going to stand for it, and we're going to do anything possible to challenge it. And in 2010, you may remember, Israel launched a lethal assault on that flotilla, killing 10 of our volunteers, thinking it was going to stop this international effort, but it didn't. We continued after then, and we're continuing to this day. Unfortunately, today, the situation is as terrible, dire as it's ever been. And I think we'll talk more about what is actually happening in Gaza, being on day 67 of not letting in one drop of aid into Gaza at a time where experts are saying 600 trucks per day are needed just to meet the bare minimum. Israel has not allowed in one truck in 67 days.
So we have this background, some of which you laid out, of Israel, lethally attacking previous flotillas. Let's fast forward to just this past week. What happened off the coast of Malta?
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Aaron. It's a pleasure being here with Rueda as well. So I got connected to the Freedom Flotilla first by accidents. In 2010, I was accompanying this mobilization that Rueda mentioned, but I was a 23-year-old person in Brazil that was very enthusiastic about it. but I had no money to join. My mother was sick and I could not go. And then it shocked me so much when I saw the outcome of that, the little assault that killed 10 people. And since then, the Freedom Flotilla was something that I admired a lot. I started accompanying the Palestinian cause since 2005, 2006. Only many years later, I managed to get to Palestine, to the West Bank, to the territories occupied in 1948, to the borders of Gaza, and to neighboring countries as well. And it changed a lot the way I see the Palestinian struggle. I also organized solidarity missions to other countries as well, like Cuba and Lebanon. And so I was actually very shocked on how much violence can the Zionist state, can the Zionist entity promote in a place backed by imperialism. And it was something that really made it such a heavy burden for the Palestinian people and for the solidarity movement to try to break the media blockade about it, because it was so hard to talk about it. People really could not understand because the lobby was so strong against the Palestinian people. And so I decided to join the flotilla in the last mission in April 2024. It was an emergency mission as well in Istanbul, where we had over 30 countries represented, 1,000 people, 5,500 tons of humanitarian aid in 3 large ships. And in the end, that flotilla didn't manage to go because of bureaucratic warfare. And then after that, I got involved with the FFC, the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, was on the Handala mission as well for the children of Gaza. And then we created a Latin American, a Brazilian campaign, a Latin American campaign. And I joined the steering committee and been an organizer of the Freedom Flotilla since then. And now we are here in Malta for this mission right now. And so right now we are dealing with the situation of this terrible attack, unprovoked attack against a civilian humanitarian mission that was trying to get to Gaza, like Weda said, over 2 months, that not a single bottle of water enters Gaza, and especially part of 578 days of the escalation of a genocide that is part of 18 years of a blockade that's from a land that is military occupied since 1967, and that suffers from genocide and ethnic cleansing since 1947, 1948, 1949. So it's actually something so big and that represents so much that I actually believe what many people say, that this global uprising for the Palestinian people in solidarity with the Palestinian people is changing the way people understand their part in this world, the way they understand the system they live in, the way they understand democracy, human rights, the way they understand development and humanitarian law, international law. So right now we've seen a terrific attack on a civilian vessel that was actually supposed to bring aid to the place where it's most needed right now, because all of Gaza is now considered under a famine situation. There's a report that says almost 300,000 children are in the brink of death from starvation. So there's nothing more important than that right now. So our mission had the aim to create a people's humanitarian corridor. Like Hueda said, even if we carry all the aid that we could in a few boats, it would be a drop in the ocean for the necessities of Gaza right now. But even then, it's important to go to defy this illegal siege, to challenge this illegal siege, and to open a humanitarian corridor. Because we know that once the people's humanitarian corridor is opened, then we can have more meaningful and more comprehensive support for the Palestinian people in the struggle against genocide. So I'm actually very glad to be able to be part of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. That's why I joined these amazing people from all walks of life. Here in Malta, we had, on this mission specifically, we had more than 20 countries represented, around 80 people, and with one boat, the Conscience, was actually the boat that was bombed. And this was actually a very horrific attack in Europe, because it's between Italy and Malta. It's technically international waters, but it's Malta exclusive economic area as well. So therefore, that's why we're denouncing it to the world, because they expanded their genocide 1,800 kilometers away from Gaza. There are no limits to them.
And where were you when this attack took place?
You know, Katie, our mission, because all of the missions, like Hueda said, they suffer from many forms of attack by the Zionist entity. So we see the bureaucratic warfare, we've seen interceptions, and we've seen attacks, like the little attack 15 years ago of the Mavi Marmara. But to avoid the bureaucratic warfare, this time our mission, knowing it was so important to open these people humanitarian corridor. Our mission was confidential mission. So people were in Malta preparing to board the boat. The boat was not here. So the boat was coming from another port to Malta. We would board the boat and then we would launch the mission publicly. And that I was with the group of people we were training all of our participants in nonviolent direct action. We were training them on media training. We were training them on legal advice as well, how to deal with the situation, how to de-escalate in a situation of brutal aggression like they did in so many other flotillas. And so we were preparing our participants to be on this mission and waiting for the boat to come. 5 hours before everyone was supposed to be on board, the boat was attacked. And by a miracle, no one died on this attack. But if it was 5 hours later, the boat would be full and definitely there would be no place where they could bomb and there would be no one there. So I was in Malta with the rest of our participants from many countries waiting for that time to depart and board the boat.
But there were people on the boat.
Yes,
definitely. One of them. Okay.
Yeah, there was 18 people, 12 crew members, and 6 participants already on the boat.
And Hueda, what can you tell us about this drone attack on the boat? And have you confirmed that this was Israel?
So the attack took place shortly after midnight. It was the morning of Friday, May 2nd. And the people on board identified at least 2 missile strikes to the front of the ship that ignited a fire on board. We have 4 people that were mildly injured, but as Thiago said, we're grateful there were no serious injuries and no deaths. It took a little over an hour to put out the fire with help of a nearby tugboat. And after that, the crew and the volunteers on board were asking, they immediately issued an SOS distress signal. And Malta being the closest country, the ship was bombed 14 miles off the coast of Malta. So it was just 2 miles from Malta's territorial waters in European waters. And Malta is the state that is obliged to render help to the civilian vessel that is in distress and to make sure that everyone is safe on board. And so people on board were asking for permission to enter Malta's territorial waters because they felt exposed. People needed to get off, were traumatized. We needed to fix the ship and continue on our mission. And for all of these reasons, we were asking to be able to come in. And inexplicably, Malta kept denying the vessel the right to go in. At one point, the vessel started steering to try to make its way in, and it was blocked by the Maltese Coast Guard. We thought that, maybe they wanted to check the vessel first. And so on Sunday, we allowed them to send in an inspector, even though we had asked for a neutral, independent observer to be with whoever they sent on board, just for transparency, safety, and security. They kept refusing that. In the end, we said, fine, come on board. And they did. They searched, inspected the ship for 4 hours at least, and certified that there is nothing dangerous, no weapons on board, as Israel always likes to say that we're dangerous. But still, they were not letting us enter. As for, was it Israel? Immediately we suspected, we're 99.9% sure it's Israel, but can we prove 100%? No. But Israel has attacked us before, as we know. Israel has attacked humanitarian aid workers before. Israel has killed our volunteers before. And certainly Israel is the primary entity that is concerned with keeping us and keeping any aid out of Gaza. So logically, it's Israel. And Israeli media started saying it was an Israeli strike pretty early on, the morning of the attack, and Israel has not denied it.
We actually have some footage of the attack. So let's take a look at this footage.
Drones have shot at the Freedom Flotilla coalition while in international waters. We have been organizing an action under a media blackout to limit Israeli sabotage. The front of the ship was targeted twice and a fire began immediately after. We have sent an SOS distress signal out, but no one has responded. Water is coming into the ship. 30 humanitarians are on board. Put pressure on officials and the Maltese government immediately to save the humanitarians on board. This is an urgent situation.
That was pretty terrifying. We also have images of the damage. We have some photos of the damage so people can get a sense of the damage. So here's some of the damage. We have more. And then finally, we actually have a video of someone asking for help. Can you tell us who this person is? Then we'll play the video. But before that, set up who this person is, who we're about to hear from.
This person on this video is Beheshti Ismail. He is the son of a person who was assassinated 15 years ago at the Mavi Marmara boat. And he's one of our organizers on the Freedom Flotilla. He's part of the Mavi Marmara Association, which was created with the families of the people who were assassinated 15 years ago.
We have been attacked. Just a few minutes back, some drones attacked the conscience. We are asking emergency relief to the Maltese authorities.
We got bombed. We got bombed. 14 miles far from Maltese port. I don't know what to say. We got bombed. You see the holes over here? Oh my god. Oh my god. The fire is still going on.
So were you guys scared at this point that people were potentially going to die?
We lost contact with them actually for many hours, and we knew that the ship was bombed and that it was taking on water. We did not know if it was sinking. We did not know actually that what kind of injuries were on board. So we were very concerned. And Tiago can tell you, we organized people who were, training on land to take a couple of boats and try to sail out to them, but they were prevented from reaching them twice. They tried it, found the next day also, and the Maltese authorities prevented them from reaching the ship and our colleagues on board and providing the kind of support that they need. And we knew that, and we were pressuring the Maltese authorities to let them come in, get the people off the ship. And, the request continued to be inexplicably denied. And the vessel right now is still in the place where it was bombed. And still we are asking the Maltese authorities to let us in. The Ismail and a couple of other people were taken off actually the ship and are now back in Istanbul. But the crew all remains on the ship for now. And where we are looking for a resolution, we are looking to fix the ship right away, again, because we have to continue this mission. At the same time, we're asking for a thorough, independent investigation, not only the one that will confirm that Israel is behind this, but one that will, we hope will give us some answers into what other authorities, what other countries knew what Israel was planning to do. Because what also has come to light is just hours before Israel bombed our ship, that there was an Israeli military plane in Maltese airspace that flew around and flew right over the area where the ship was bombed before going back to Israel. There are a lot of other factors that indicate that there are other countries that knew, and this is part of what we have been dealing with for years. So we have a situation where not only is the United States obviously fully on board with what Israel is doing and enabling it, but other countries are not only are not living up to their obligations under international law, under just humane law and principles, in not respecting an illegal situation that Israel has created, but they're also hampering civilian efforts to do something about it. It should be, I think people should ask themselves why should civilians try to organize a boat and aid and try to confront the Israeli military to make their way into Gaza, to bring humanitarian aid, to open a Gaza, which is illegally besieged like this, when countries should be doing this. But not only are countries not putting aid on ships and insisting on getting into Gaza, but they are doing Israel's work by trying to sabotage our efforts. So this is one of the times, but in previous, Tiago talked about last year, we were all gathered in Istanbul trying to go, and we were sabotaged again by countries pulling our flag, or not allowing us to leave port. And we have been dealing with that for years. So it's really a shameful situation. And one of the things we are trying to do is put pressure on these countries by highlighting their complicity with their complicity in two ways. One, they have an obligation not to respect the illegal situation that Israel has created. They have an obligation not to render any assistance to a country that is committing genocide. And all of them are on notice that a genocide is taking place in Gaza. But not only are they not doing anything to stop it, but they are rendering assistance in refusing to sanction Israel in any way and in stopping civilian efforts from trying to break this siege and get to the people of Gaza.
I was on one of the flotilla ships that tried to leave Greece back in June 2011. I was there reporting for Democracy Now! And this was a ship of American citizens, people like Medea Benjamin of Code Pink and Heidi Epstein, who was a Holocaust survivor who since passed. And after many delays, the ship finally just decided to leave and become the first to attempt to break what was then a blockade. But not long after we left port, an armed Greek boat came and pointed guns at us and forced the boat to return to shore, and that was that. And there are many other examples, some of which you've talked about. And I was in Turkey last summer as well, and I heard from people the frustration that despite the Turkish government talking tough on Israel, criticizing it, they were basically doing its bidding by not letting it leave Turkish waters. So, from your understanding, what kind of pressure have these governments been put under, especially by the U.S. and Israel, to crack down on these flotilla ships around the world?
It's actually very important that we see this, Aaron, because we see a pattern here. First, they put pressure on the countries who provide us certificates of registry and flags. So they try to revoke the flag. That's what they did with Palau this time, a few hours before the bombings. That's what they did with Guinea-Bissau 1 year ago in Istanbul when you were there as well. But they also get in contact with countries where the boats are going into, port cities and stuff. So, for example, there is this denounce here in Malta from a local politician that it's denouncing the government that Israel formally requested from the Maltese government that they would not allow the conscience to enter Maltese territorial waters. And if it entered Maltese territorial waters, they would not allow the conscience to leave Maltese territorial waters. And they said that they would not be able to allow it to get in or to get out if it went in, because they would not have a certificate. But the problem is that it took many days before Palau revoked the certificate of registry. So this brings an idea and suspicions of complicity. Also, that's another thing that Rueda said. Until now, a week after the attack that shocked so many people around the world, the Maltese government, neither the European Union, even condemned the attack. So we can see the complicity here on this as well. We also see the bureaucratic warfare going through insurance companies as well, and going through maritime agencies that provide services for our boats. So they do a very comprehensive work to try to enable us, to deprive us from any possibility of going with our boats. So it is something quite shocking that they do all this work, and they actually try to do all this work, but the flotillas do everything legally, and they do everything in a very transparent way, and they do everything publicly most of the times. This time I was trying to do confidentially, not to be hindered by them, but everyone knows what we carry. So they always try to put a frame on us that we were carrying guns, we were from a specific armed organization in Palestine. Like they say about the hospitals in Gaza, like they say about residential areas in Gaza. And of course, this type of stigma is not, people are not believing on it that much. But it's very important for us that we are able to show what we are. We are a humanitarian mission. Of course, we don't carry any guns. Of course, all of our cargo is inspected. Of course, all of our participants are non-violent participants. And the Freedom Flotilla Coalition also has, by its principles, that we support the Palestinian people as a whole, and we don't support specific organizations in Palestine. So none of our participants, either they're organic of any of those organizations, neither they support publicly any of those organizations specifically. So we do all of our best to be able to be a transparent humanitarian mission that anyone can see what's our purpose, what we're here to do, because they will try to hinder our mission through bureaucratic warfare, through smear campaigns, through all these types of accusations. And when they cannot do that, Aaron, they will do the other things that they did. They will try to intercept our mission, like they did so many other times, like Hueda was mentioning. And the other time they will try to attack the mission, like they did 15 years ago, and like they did last week. And Hueda is one of the people, from the very few people of the very first 5 missions that tried to break the siege of Gaza that actually made to Gaza. So when we are preparing a mission here, we talk to our participants about all the 4 possibilities of scenarios: that we get stuck at port by bureaucratic warfare, that we actually get intercepted, or that we get attacked, or that we actually made to Gaza. And that's what we are here for. We are here to push for it and to continue struggling and to continue mobilizing, because like Hueda said, it's not about us. We are not the story on the flotilla. The reason why the flotillas exist is because the people of Gaza are suffering a genocide, and they're under illegal Israeli blockade for 18 years. And now for more than 2 months without a single bottle of water entering Gaza. So that's why people are not with their families here on the flotilla, because we are here for a purpose, to serve as a solidarity mission to the Palestinian people, and they will do all they do to try to hinder us, but we'll keep on struggling to continue. Like we say, when governments fail, we'll sail, and we will keep on sailing until Palestine is free.
They try to smear us with this, whatever we're carrying and whoever organizations we're associated with, but we actually constitute more of a threat to them the way we are than really if we were carrying any weapons or anything like that, right? Because we are exposing the true nature of their policies. It has absolutely nothing to do with security. It has to do with persecuting the Palestinian people, has to do with implementing their genocidal campaign and their campaign of extermination, and making sure that they're breaking any form of or attacking any form of international solidarity or anyone or anything that will challenge that. So they try all this bureaucratic warfare. When that doesn't work, they will come and bomb our ships or attack us in other way. Again, we've been killed before in other countries. We see what they're using in the United States, the crackdown, the arrests of people who are merely standing up or protesting in solidarity. They want to maintain the narrative, that they are in the right, but that has been totally exposed. Nobody believes it anymore, and that has been what is dangerous to them, and so that they will continue to do whatever is possible to shut us down, to shut the truth down. And the important thing is that we don't let them, no matter what. Whatever comes our way. And that's also what the Freedom Flotilla Coalition is saying, that they bombed our boat. This time we will get it fixed. We'll find another way. We're going to take back to sea, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop until we break this siege, till the genocide ends, till Palestine is free. I mean, we have to, because we are at this precipice really where, we are being forced to watch the extermination of an entire people, where powerful countries are telling us that there's nothing we can do about it. Millions and millions are rising up around the world, right, and haven't been able to change policy. They're trampling all over international law, which is also trampling and jeopardizing the safety of everyone. And they want us to accept this world order where their might is what's right, and then nobody's safe. And then there's us, and what we're trying to do is saying, no, we're not going to accept this, and we have to defeat this system, and we have to make sure that we are navigating into a world where there is international human rights, humanitarian law, where there is respect for humanity, and where all lives are protected. And the question is, which side is going to win? And we don't have a choice. Our side and our vision has to win, or nobody is safe.
So we have Israel imposing a starvation siege on Gaza, not allowing in any aid, including food and water, for more than 2 months. We also have a concerted effort to block humanitarian missions like yours and to attack them with drones. And now you have emerging, and this is some new developments, Israel and the U.S. pushing a whole new mechanism for delivering aid into Gaza. It's called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It's an organization that was registered quietly in Geneva a few months ago. And what we know about it is basically, it looks as if an effort to basically replace the entire UN system in Gaza to put aid distribution in Gaza entirely under Israeli-U.S. control. Here is Craig Mokhiber. He is a former senior UN official, human rights attorney. He says this: the Israeli regime has set up a fake humanitarian organization, perfidiously called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, registering it in Switzerland as part of its propaganda efforts to distract attention from its genocide in Palestine and as a vehicle for blocking actual aid organizations. The foundation is set to collaborate with the regime's occupation forces and U.S. mercenaries to further tighten the occupation of Gaza. Now, what we know about this organization so far is that there are no Palestinians involved whatsoever, none. The board includes former U.S. military officials, corporate financiers, veterans of USAID, the State Department aid organization. And apparently they're in talks with veterans of the World Food Program to take part. But people who are currently with, organizations like the World Food Program have said that they don't want anything to do with this because this is basically Israeli control in disguise under the guise of being an aid organization. This is relatively new, Hueda, so I'm not sure if you had the time to read up on this, but I mean, just hearing some of the details so far, what is your response to this?
Look, it's another form of a situation where you have the countries that are attacking and are genociding Gaza and that want to ethnically cleanse or otherwise exterminate the people of Gaza, allowed to control what food is going to get to them. I mean, that's really what it is. That it's what it is now, where Israel has announced its intention to starve out people, to kick them out, to really drive them out wholesale, and a country that is on trial for genocide and its primary backer getting to decide if any food or medical aid will get to people and to what people and when. It is an obnoxious situation that anyone would even think that is acceptable. I think that is why the coalition of humanitarian organizations that work in Gaza have outright rejected it for really the farce that it is. And it is not a humanitarian response or solution at all. It just continues this control over whether people get to live or die. It's actually the same kind of threat to the Palestinian people that exists today, but only dropping little crumbs here and there. It is unacceptable, and I hope that people will see it as unacceptable and continue to push to allow the humanitarian organizations to actually do their work. There are dozens and dozens of humanitarian organizations, the United Nations and different bodies within the United Nations that have decades of experience or combined hundreds of years of experience of doing this work, and they are being shut out. So the countries that are actually exterminating the Palestinian people get to decide what food and aid they get. It is obnoxious. It is unacceptable.
But UNRWA, of course, is, as these people have been claiming with absolutely no evidence, and we know it's a lie, UNRWA is what? A terrorist organization. So they, of course, have to take over. Israel has to take over. I want to ask you, Hueda, because you were there, about the 2010 attack. We actually have some footage of it for people who may not have remembered it or lived through it. So we're going to look at some footage of it and then ask you to react to it.
They'd hoped to deliver aid and draw attention to Israel's 3-year blockade of Gaza, but the attempt ended in tragedy. In the early hours of morning, Israeli armed forces stormed the lead ship in the flotilla that was Gaza-bound. At least 19 people were killed. The vessel was still in international waters, approximately 70 kilometers off the Gaza coast, well away from Israel's zone of maritime control. The Palestinian government called Israel's action an attack against humanity. Saab Erekat, Palestinian chief negotiator, agreed.
We condemn with the strongest possible term the Israeli attack on the flotilla freedom ships that were coming to Gaza in a peaceful manner from Europe, from other countries, Turkey, Arab countries, to deliver some supplies to the besieged people of Gaza.
The military action has left Israel at the forefront of a diplomatic crisis, but the Israeli government remains defiant. Danny Ayalon, the deputy foreign minister, has accused those aboard the ships of provocation and premeditated violence.
I want to report this morning that the armada of hate and violence in support of Hamas terror organization was a premeditated and outrageous provocation. The organizers are well known for their ties to global jihad, Al-Qaeda, and Hamas. They have a history of arms smuggling and deadly terror. On board the ship, we found weapons prepared in advance and used against our forces. The organizers' intent was violent, their method was violent, and the results were unfortunately violent. Israel regrets any loss of life and did everything to avoid this outcome. We repeatedly called upon the organizers and all those who were associated with them through diplomatic channels and any other means we could to stop this provocation.
What do you say to that, Hueda? Why did you guys come with weapons and so many Al-Qaeda members?
Right. We're all Al-Qaeda, right? You know, everything, it continues. It is the same playbook. Nothing that he said was ever proven or that they could prove. And you know, one of the things when they stormed our ships, one of the first things they go after is all of our recording equipment. So they take our cameras, they take our phones, they take our chips. There was a couple of people were able to smuggle out some footage, but they took it all. And then they took all of us hostage and kept us incommunicado for days so they can get out this ridiculous narrative of theirs. Until they dominate all of the airwaves. And that is the story for a while until finally some people are free and able to talk about what they experience. We have on our missions always people from all walks of life. You know, there was a bishop and other religious people. There were parliamentarians on that ship. There were students and medical workers and just, we're all Al-Qaeda, we're all Hamas, right? That's, of course, what they say. And as far as being a provocation, we are a provocation because we are challenging this unlawful policy. Well, you know, most of the world looks up to the history of refusing complicity with unlawful or with unjust laws, right? We look at the leaders of resistance movements in the past. Here in the United States, we glorify, you know, Martin Luther King. We look to Gandhi. We look to and these all use the same kind of methods and tactics we're using, which is direct action to confront injustice. And you know, if that's provocation, then we are being provocative. Yes.
Tiago, as someone who I don't know how old you were in 2010, but I assume you knew about this at least now, even if you learned about it years later. And I know you said that this isn't about you, but were you afraid that something like this could happen, a lethal attack?
You know, Katie, I think everyone that comes in a Freedom Flotilla mission deal with this possibility. And whenever people say that this is a high-risk mission, I always agree because, of course, it is. But it's only a small fraction of the risk that the Palestinian people have to endure every single day in Gaza. And whenever people say that we are brave for doing this, indeed, it requires courage to do something like this, but it's just a small fraction of the courage that the Palestinian people need to have all the time. Like Hueda said, this type of nonviolent direct action, which we can go through the civil rights movement, the fight against apartheid, the independence of India, many other cases, is something very effective to promote change because we expose so much the cruelty and their violence, and we try to do it as best as we can. So we had people from all walks of life here. We had doctors, we had medical workers, we had members of parliament, we had influencers, Hollywood actors, climate youth movement activists, and people from everywhere, from every single continent in the world. Yes, Greta was here as well, a very brave person as well, wanting to do her best to support the Palestinian cause. And so everyone is confronted with that. Every family of each participant thinks about this scenario the most because it's the worst case scenario for a Freedom Flotilla mission. But in the end, the synthesis that we discussed, because we have collective care sessions as well. When we discuss collectively strategy, we have sessions to hear the stories of people. And what people will say that on a synthesis of all of it is that the biggest fear that they had is that they would live their lives knowing there was so much exploitation, oppression, and destruction of nature in the world. And the biggest fear was to live their lives without ever being able to challenge it and to change it. So the biggest fear will be to live under submission, under domination, under a planet that is going through destruction right now without being able to do anything. So people were very actually honored to be in one of those missions. So I feel the same. I feel that there's a historical calling for this type of mission. The Freedom Flotilla is not more important than other solidarity missions, and it's a solidarity mission for the Palestinian people that they are leading their resistance, their anti-colonial struggle. But the Freedom Flotilla is connected to every single people disrupting arms factories in the United Kingdom, or going to demonstrations anywhere else, or doing boycott, divestments, promoting divestments and sanctions, or doing grassroots work in their cities, or trying to break the media blockade and promote free information like you do on your show. So everyone is together like a bunch of small little ants promoting a different world. Because what I always try to say to our people here, Katie, that the future of the Palestinian people is most likely the future of all the peoples around the world. Because the genocidal experiment that they test on Palestinian bodies, on the over the Palestinian people, they have an ambition to enlarge it on a worldwide scale. And the attack 1,800 kilometers from them shows how far they are willing to go to promote their hateful and racial supremacist ideology, which is Zionism, and how far is imperialism as well willing to go to promote their realm of violence and destruction. So the biggest fear is not to be able to counter this disaster and not to be able to be useful for the great cause of our generation.
I'm going to ask you guys your final thoughts, because it's so moving what you're saying. And I do want to know what's next for the flotilla, how people can support what you're doing. But before that, Tiago, I just want to ask you what kind of role Brazil is having in this conflict, if any, this occupation, I should say, this genocide, because I know that a lot of governments are complicit. Some governments kind of like pay lip service to the Palestinian cause without actually supporting it. Where does Brazil fall on this?
Brazil is in the middle of the way, Katie, because Lula, right at the first month of the escalation of genocide that has 78 years, didn't start on October 2023. The very first month, Lula made a very powerful speech saying that it was a genocide and it was a battle made against women and children. And this is very important because Lula is a very prominent figure in world diplomacy. But in the end, this needs to go beyond symbolic speeches and go to concrete action. So Brazil is still between the 10th biggest providers of oil, for example, for the Zionist entity. In Brazil, we still have some contracts with the industrial military complex of Israel. We have spy softwares working in Brazil. We have them training our military police in many states. We have them producing armored vehicles or trying to buy drones and armored vehicles from Elbit system itself. We have so many agreements between universities as well. So it's a country that is being a huge victim of the Zionist lobby, and we're trying to counter it as much as we can. And actually, in the last 1.5 years, we had a huge growth of the Palestine Solidarity Movement, and it's being giving a momentum to anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist and anti-colonial struggle as a whole in Brazil, but still not enough. Still, Brazil is between the countries that says good things about it, but does not come to concrete action, for example, breaking relationships with Israel. But we have a neighbor just beside Brazil, which is Colombia, where Gustavo Petro made the very first speech condemning the attack on the flotilla 1 week ago, and actually made that other 2 statements saying that the flotilla was a very important tool to promote solidarity with Palestine and to help to break the illegal siege. So we have many examples in the global south of inspiring people trying to promote a change in our society. And I hope Brazil eventually will join these in substantial actions, not only symbolic actions as well.
And what is the next move that you guys are trying to make in Malta, but also kind of on an international level?
In Malta right now, we have 4 demands, like Hueda said. The first demand is that we demand an independent and thorough investigation of what happened. All of those things that the Maltese government did indicates that we need our own investigation made by UN experts that will get to the bottom of it. What happened, who did it, and how did it work? How did this happen in European territory? So we need this independent investigation, and so far we're not allowed to bring an independent surveyor, an investigator, or forensic surveyors into our boats, which is a problem with the government of Malta. The second thing is that we need a dignified solution for our boat and our crew. The crew who is on board the boat, they are survivors of this attack. And of course they want to go home. And we need to replace for new crew, for any solution that we find for the boat. So the Maltese government does not allow anyone to get to the boat. And this is still a problem yet. And the Maltese government saying to the media that they want to repair our boat, but they don't want the boat to get into Maltese territorial waters. But anyone who knows about maritime mechanics know how hard it would be to fix such severe damage offshore. And the weather is changing here, so the weather will not collaborate with it as well. And if the boat stays offshore, how will the Maltese government guarantee security? Because it's still vulnerable to a new attack. So if it stays outside, how can we change the crew? How can the boat be repaired? And how can it be safe? If it enters Malta, how can we change the crew? How can it be repaired? How can the Maltese government guarantee that it will have safe passage and unhindered passage to leave for us to continue our mission? That is our second demand, a dignified solution for the boat and the crew. The third thing is that we urge the European Union and the Maltese government to condemn this attack, because it was an attack, an unprovoked attack against a civilian flotilla, humanitarian aid mission, and it needs to be condemned. And the fourth thing is that it needs to be condemned not only because of the attack that by a miracle didn't kill anyone, but it's also hindering humanitarian aid that was supposed to get to Gaza to help to end, to fight starvation and famine. So it needs to be in the context of the genocide, which was supposed to be protected by ICJ provisional rulings, by the last resolutions of the United Nations Security Councils, by ICC genocide process against Netanyahu and Yoav Galan. All of this is part of the same context in support of the Palestinian people and against the genocide. So those are our four demands, like Huwaida was saying, and we really need to push for them, because if we don't do this now, when we will do it?
And Huwaida, what about you? Anything you want to highlight that you're working on?
Well, we are trying to see that we can get back out to sea as soon as possible. We don't know when that is yet. We invite people to support us in any way that they can. Certainly, in the United States, we have a U.S. campaign that's part of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. It's U.S. boats to Gaza, so people can look us up. And, there's the Brazilian contingent, there's an Irish contingent. We have many different countries that are involved. You can also follow us at freedomflotilla.org, because it's not only the people that board the boats, right? It's the boats can be, the missions are successful with the support and participation from afar of all of the people around the world who follow us and who take the news and who will use it to educate and to lobby and to pressure. So we will be preparing to go again. I encourage people to look us up and follow us, contribute if you can, apply to be on if you want to, but a lot of the work also is done at home to take that information of what we are doing and tie it into all of the other campaigns that are being used to expose and to pressure. And it all fits together. So I would just say that we have to, I think international civil society is rising up, has been rising up. And that has been one of the things also that we're hearing from Palestine that is giving them hope in a situation that seems very, very, very hopeless. I don't know if any one of us can understand what it's like to see your child just wither away in front of you because you can't provide a piece of bread. And that is what is happening to tens of thousands of children. They are the first to be impacted by starvation because their bodies are weak, right? And we are allowing it to happen. We know that the International Court of Justice said that all states have an obligation and all states are failing, but that is the history of international law, right? You could have laws on the books that sound nice, but implementation all comes down to political will. Our countries don't have the political will right now, but we have to create it. It is our movement that creates it, and we are all part of this united global movement. So as bleak as things are, I would just say that we have to keep on. We have to keep on. Palestinian people are calling us not to give up on them, and certainly our collective future demands that we keep on.
Huwaida Araf and Tiago Avila of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.